Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
This week we are going to continue our John Carpenter Festival with 1984's Starman.
Let's dive in. All right, everybody. I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher. Please like and subscribe if you like what you hear /C.
Yes.
You can do both.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the rest. Everything should be there at the bottom.
Yes.
So, episode 2 of the John Carpenter Festival.
Yes, Starman. Probably Carpenter's most accessible movie, right?
Well, part of the reason why he did this is that he did The Thing.
That's right. It had terrible
and
numbers, right?
It got terrible reviews, which now, all these years later, it's
Seriously,
like,
it's
poor John.
Top 20 movie
You
ever.
know, if from the world we can apologize, because it seems like it kept happening to him over and over. The people are like, another flop from Mr. Carpenter. All of which turned out to be cult classics that people loud as being. He
definitely has a cult following.
Yeah, I mean, and even beyond cult, to the point where people are like, oh, this is another masterpiece that nobody paid attention to at the time. So he goes into Starman because The Thing, he was so afraid that it was going to pigeonhole him as both a horror genre director as well as somebody who was making flops, essentially.
For sure. I mean, this seems like a movie that Spielberg would have made, right? Like,
that's what
definitely in that camp of.
Yep, that's what I was thinking
of
too.
That kind of stuff, and so very different for him, where he's usually the horror. The horror master. He did The Thing and Halloween.
Also not written by him, and I think that's another really big point.
I agree.
Here.
I was going to point that out as well. The
Yeah.
stuff that he doesn't write definitely, for some reason, seems to shine a little bit more. I don't know why necessarily, but for me personally,
I think it's interesting because with this movie in particular, the screenwriter, I was reading an interview, Dean Reisner co-wrote the screenplay, and Columbia Pictures bought two screenplays at that time. One was Starman, and the other one was a film called Night Skies. And
E.T.
They ended up going with Starman and dropped Night Skies because they were like, oh, it's a kid's movie.
Too similar.
And literally Dean Reisner said, well, it just goes to show that you never can tell in this business. That E.T. was one of the biggest movies ever made.
Highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah, and the other movie's Starman.
Starman is a good movie.
It's a great movie. I love this movie.
I do too. It's a very sweet movie. Similar to when we were doing the Sci-Fi Fest. I think this movie could be a play, like Ex Machina, like we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very simple, sweet story for the most part. I guess there's a road trip element to it.
There is a road trip element. I think a lot of this movie, I think part of what makes this movie sweet is that and very endearing, is that it's a strange movie in the sense that it gives you some strange emotions while watching it, but it's not a challenging film. And that was one thing Carpenter said going into it, is he was like, I didn't want to make a dark film with this. I wanted to showcase how America could be this beautiful place to this extraterrestrial creature. And even though it does get scary, and yes, the government does come in and do all the scary things that a government does, and actually, to compare it to E.T., I think that from the standpoint of the alien, it's very similar. I mean, I
agree.
With the exception of there being, E.T. doesn't have a lovemaking scene between E.T. and Elliot, but
yeah, I mean, they get close though in the director's cut.
Well, I mean, the version Spielberg never wanted you to see. No, but it would be a very different movie if just in the third act it was like, oh, they're not just connected symbiotically, but they actually.
Yeah. Well, I actually do think the scientist guy here, Sherman, is the guy who's kind of chasing them the whole time, but he's the one who wants to. He works for SETI. And he's the
Charles Martin Smith. I love this guy. He's totally one of those guys.
He's
for
Keys
sure.
from E.T., right?
He is Keys.
He's very similar.
Actually,
he's
I would say
surrounded by this government that wants to shoot everything, even though they sent out the signal with the Voyager 2.
And that's what he says too. And I would actually, I love where he says, like, we invited him.
Yeah.
Right? He's
What
like,
are we
to be
shooting
fair,
him?
we invited him.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't be shooting. But I would say his character, even a little bit more than Keyes, is probably closer to Francis Truffaut's character in Close Encounters.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But I do love Charles Martin Smith. He's totally one of those that-guys. Probably best known from American Graffiti.
Yes.
But we've seen him in so many different things. And here, I love his plot, his B plot.
Yeah.
He is so, all these moments with him talking to these different scientists, and he's like, we're still primates.
Yeah.
And the other guys being like,
Technologically.
what? And he's like, no, this being is way beyond us.
Yeah.
And so his mini arc that he goes through is actually really important and really interesting to watch in this film also. But I guess let's rewind all the way back and start from the beginning here.
For sure.
A really simple setup, actually.
Yeah, for sure. They send out the Voyager 2 message that has greetings in 54 languages, and this is kind of what the movie starts with. And they respond. Someone responds, and it ends up being this alien. We never find out what the planet is, or anything like that. Where he's
anything
from,
about the planet? I mean,
or his name, or anything.
Or
like that.
Even if it's a he.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Just
but
it's this being of light, and not even a being of light from something like Cocoon, where you're like, oh, it has a physical form to it. It's just this orb of light, really.
Yeah, well, it crash lands in Wisconsin by Karen Allen's house.
Yes.
And she's recently widowed. And I really thought it was kind of a unique take on an alien ship, because he's out of the ship before it crashes.
Right.
And he's off as this ball of light, basically, going around looking for something to attach itself to.
And that POV of the alien light is really interesting. It's not creepy. It's somehow, and I think that, boy, talk about exposition through all show and no tell with the Karen Allen character and her. And what's interesting is, that Super 8 reel that she's watching of Jeff Bridges and her singing together and playing guitar, that actually ended up on the soundtrack of the two of them doing that. They did a studio version of it, which is really sweet.
All I have to do is dream, 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 dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine.
They're both so young here.
I mean, they're everybody's
Especially
so
Jeff
young.
Bridges.
Definitely.
This is probably pre-Tron days, even.
I
right?
think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And Karen Allen is, I really, in a lot of ways, think I forgot that it was her that was in this, because in my brain I only categorize her as being in the Raiders movie, the first Indiana Jones movie. That's always where I categorize her, and I forget about this movie. But
she also
she's great
is
here.
in Animal House.
Yes, of course.
And then she's the mom in Sandlot. So she's in a lot of stuff.
Whoa, I forgot about
just
Sandlot.
saying.
Good pull. No.
It's kind of interesting. I guess we'll get to her character in a minute, but she is a really good actor. But this
She definitely is.
alien attaches itself to this photo book that it opens up that has a piece of his DNA in his hair and a
lock of
photo
his
of
hair.
him. Plus, it's watching the video of him as well. And we get this very Carpenter-esque formation from birth to
Classic body horror.
Yeah,
classic
and
Carpenter
it's
body
really
horror.
the only. I mean, there's a few Carpenter-esque special effects here, but that's probably the most in the movie. Like it's not overarching campy like a lot of his other stuff.
No, not at all. I think there's this, and then later in the same scene where the alien has the orbs in his hand and is sort of doing this weird floating thing that they actually filmed upside down and then matted him into that scene, and all of his hair is standing straight up.
Yeah.
That's probably the only other one that's really noticeable as being like
still
a
the
weird...
digital effects here, like just for the day, I'm sure it was fine, but the digital effects do not age well in the Carpenter movies.
And I actually would disagree with you in this film.
Yeah?
And the reason why is because I think that whatever it was that he was doing with these weird glowing blue outlines on people, and obviously all that is a way to hide the actual green screen of the way that they filmed it back in the day. But to me, it actually, there's so much more happening in sci-fi and horror movies nowadays that's derivative and harkening back to this era, that now when I see
it looks like shit. I'm not saying it's not a good idea.
Well, what I'm saying is like, it actually looks like effects that they would use nowadays as a way of being like, look how like weird we're being with our effects now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like being purposeful about it now,
Sure.
but it having that same sort of aesthetic to it, I guess.
Still looks better though now.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
But it's funny. There's almost a Black Mirror episode with a very similar story here with Donald Gleason, the Irish actor. But basically her husband passes away and in a car wreck, and she's able to recreate him through this service, and all of his social media profiles are combined, and basically she gets to recreate her husband, and he comes back.
Yeah,
and
it's
starts hanging out with her.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
Great,
Yeah.
that's a great Black Mirror episode.
It is
if
a
you're
great
into
Black
that
Mirror
one.
episode for sure.
But similar themes as far as that, because you have this great contrast of him coming back, and it's not like he's stupid, but he definitely has a lot to learn. But he's smart, and he's still learning English, right? And there's just like, he has these weird, like, I read that he studied birds with the way that he talks.
Oh, really?
He
That
kind of
makes
does
sense.
this with his lips when he talks, and
Yeah.
like clarify a little jumpy.
Yeah,
and
well,
like,
and
stuff like that. Like, it's just kind of he's getting used to his body, and he slowly becomes more human throughout the movie. But it's just kind of interesting, just the way that Bridges plays the character. It's very odd, but totally works.
Totally works. And I think that there's I think the thing that needs to be said, the sort of elephant in the room here, is that with slightly different actors or acting and slightly different direction, none of this works. Like, it is a super corny story. Like, it could not work 100 ways and work well one way, and it worked well that one way.
I don't think it's anything we haven't seen before.
Right, but I just think something about this mixture of actors and director made it work so well. And part of it is this kind of bizarre, almost uncanny valley aspect that you're talking about in Bridges' performance, where there's times where he almost has this like lizard-like intelligence rather than it being something that feels very warm and human, down to even the way that he's walking. And it kind of got me down this, for lack of a better term, the Edgar suit rabbit hole, where I started thinking of Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Men in Black, where he's in the Edgar suit.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then I started thinking about like other performances like that, where someone's supposed to not necessarily be a person that's dressed up to look like a person. Right. And so another one I was actually thinking of was, and you were doing, this is your opportunity to do the song,
No, I'm not
was David Bowie's character in The Man Who Fell to Earth, who also has sort of this stilted, weird way in which he moves, in which he talks. But I love that here.
Mechanical.
Yeah, well, they're just that something's off. Like, I haven't watched enough humans to know that like I'm doing a really good job yet, right? Like, you can probably kind of see through my act, to the point where the running gag here is different characters going, "You're not from around here, are you?"
Yeah.
Which is a really fun little bit. But
it is fun learning with him, though, right? And like, with his simple understanding of these kind of things we take for granted, right? Of life, with life, and him trying to get it explained to him by her or some other way, like define shit.
yeah,
Up yours, like stuff like that, which some of us played for comedic effect, and again, it works and it's fine. But
then there's these other scenes.
there's
I'm thinking about
define
when
love.
That's the
how
scene.
do you do that
When she is trying to explain what
to
love
her
is.
dead husband?
Yes, and they're sitting in that diner. Like, that is some masterful acting there.
Really,
It's-
the contrast of this movie, and the fact that she is hanging out with her dead husband, trying to get over him,
yeah,
and having this history with him, not necessarily a bad history, it's just she misses him, and going through this, has to just be crazy, and it's kind of weird because like I can't tell, like she never actually really seems that scared to me. And I don't know if it's because she's just not great in this movie or if that's supposed to be the character. Because I do like Karen Allen as an actor. She's awesome. But I just can't, like, she, outside of trying to leave a few different times, she doesn't actually seem that scared to me.
I wonder if there's some.
Maybe she's just a timid person. I don't know.
Well, and or I'm wondering if there's just this internal struggle that she's having.
Exactly.
With
Yeah.
This idea,
That's
right?
what I'm saying. Yeah.
And
is that
also,
part of
like,
it, or is that it just not a good acting performance?
Well, I think she's fantastic. So I wouldn't say
agree.
it's an acting performance thing. I guess I'm trying to put myself in her shoes. And
Yeah.
if you were someone that's grieving a person that you loved, and then, all right, so try to put yourself here, Pulcher.
Okay.
And then, so you're grieving,
Grieving.
and now they're back, but they're an alien.
Oh, that you watched get birthed
Like,
from a baby.
you're not going to let them just leave.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, well, you're in my dead spouse's,
I mean,
like,
she does try to leave.
but then she keeps coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're in this elongated state of shock.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be.
Probably
That makes-
days
that
and
makes
days
way
and
more
days
sense.
worth of shock.
That makes tons of sense if
Right.
that's the answer. But I just, when I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, she keeps saying she wants to leave, but she doesn't actually look scared. She rarely screams,
Yeah.
you know, or anything like that. And I don't know. It's not the fault of the
I don't
movie.
even know.
It's
I don't
not
even
a
know how
fault
you
of the
wrap
movie.
your brain around it. Yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah.
Um,
But so he has these 6 balls that he carries around with him. I guess there's 6. At least there was at the beginning, and he kind of uses them throughout the movie for various things. Honestly, everything. At one point, they're a weapon.
Yeah.
At one point, they
bring a deer back to life.
Yeah.
They bring her back to life.
Absolutely.
I love the usage of those because it makes him not just magic.
Yeah.
We know in a very real way that he isn't this all-powerful, all-omnipotent being. Rather, he I mean, for all intent and purpose, he's weak. He says at the very beginning, like, I can't stay here. I have to
He
get
has
here
3 days
in
to
3
get to
days.
his ship.
Yeah.
In Arizona. So is that an Area 51 thing? Is that what we're assuming?
I mean, I think so, but he doesn't go right to Area 51. He goes to this crater.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of this movie was actually filmed in southern Utah also.
Yeah.
So,
I could see it.
yeah, definitely. The movie looks gorgeous just in terms as a road trip movie.
Yeah.
The places that they're stopping in are just absolutely beautiful. I do like the usage of those orbs for that reason, though, that there's this sort of sensibility that when these are used up, like he's weak, like he can be killed.
It's like his life.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean that's and the fact that he decides to use them in these different ways, like with the deer. Let's talk about this deer scene.
Yeah. He's fascinated by this. Why do we kill? What's the reasoning for it? But also, you know, why is this displayed on this asshole's, you know, front of his car?
Totally.
Yeah.
Now that asshole, by the way, fun fact, that guy played Jason Voorhees
Oh, wow.
in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, I believe.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
not from the beginning, though.
Not from the beginning.
Okay.
But he is like, I was like, who is that guy? And I was looking him up and was like, oh, he was a Jason.
All right.
Which again, you know, sort of a cross-pollination of genres here.
Yeah.
You have the guy who made Halloween gets to work with one of the Jasons.
That's true.
But, you know, I do think that this idea where he's saying, well, do deer kill you? And she's like, no, of course not. And he's like, well, then why do you kill deer? And he just can't get over that curb. I love that. And it's funny, too, because in that scene, like while I was watching it, for some reason I had completely forgotten the deer scene, which is a very iconic scene in this movie. But it made me go, holy shit, that's where Victor Salvo stole the whole idea in the movie Powder, where the deer dies and the kid's like, oh, and like, I can feel the deer dying.
Wow. Pulling Powder reference.
I mean, I'm just continuously finding more reasons to hate that movie.
I don't
much.
remember it that much. Why do you hate it?
I hate it because it's this movie about how, like, we're all different. We need to learn how to get along. And Victor Salva, the guy who directed it, is like a convicted pedophile.
Oh.
Yeah. He's the same guy who made Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
Anyway.
Hey.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. You know, it touches on the primitive nature of the world and kind of how far away we are from actual, you know, getting along and having this holistic world where technology is advanced enough where we can share it across universes and all sorts of things, right? Like, I don't know. To me, I thought it just kind of, this movie in general just kind of questions a lot of those things. Not necessarily questions it, but like makes you think, right? It makes you like, oh, wow, yeah. Why?
Well, it's you raise an interesting point. And what I wrote down was "Welcome to Earth," because I was just thinking about it on that level, and I was
if
like,
an alien came to Earth today, I would show them this movie, right? Wouldn't you? Just to kind of give it like, I can't explain everything, but here's a loose template of why we do shit we do.
In the original screenplay of the movie K-Pax, this is true.
K-Pax and Powder in the same episode.
In the original screenplay of K-Pax, this is supposed to be Kevin Spacey's...
Did you read the original screenplay?
No, this is supposed to be Kevin Spacey's character's favorite movie.
Oh, the Starman?
His Starman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I don't know if that's just supposed to make us think even more so that K-Pax was just a crazy guy.
Also, another convicted pedophile.
He's not convicted.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's hiding
You're
in
right.
a bunker somewhere. Sorry.
We shouldn't be laughing at that.
No, we shouldn't be laughing at that.
I do think there is a lot of these moments where he is figuring stuff out that are really funny. My favorite is when he mimics Frank Sinatra. In the
that's
car.
a great moment.
That's a great moment. And then watching the guy pee, also a good moment.
Oh, that's a classic '80s gay panic moment.
Oh, totally.
There's always one at every truck stop.
God damn it!
Like, well, what are you doing hanging out at all the truck stops, buddy? Yeah.
I mean, he hit on him outside. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's his
totally.
fault.
It's his fault. He let him on. Speaking of, let's get to the sex scene.
Okay.
It's really
Train sex.
Train sex. Train sex. If nothing else, train sex. You know, when it shows up in the movie, it doesn't feel weird at all, actually. Like,
No.
I remembered
You understand why she would do it.
I remember being very titillated about this when I was a child. Because this was, you know, it's like a PG movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember as a kid being like,
Side boob.
they're having sex
Mm-hmm.
and he's an alien or whatever. And as an adult watching it, I'm like, it is again in a different person's hands, could again be super corny and not work at all and feel like cringy. And instead it's so sweet. And it is this wild experience for the alien, and for her, it's this weird amalgam between she's actually, obviously it doesn't hurt that this guy looks like her dead husband,
Sure.
but she's also really falling for what a loving, caring being this thing is.
Yeah.
And so for her, it's this amalgam of both things where it's like it's a chance for her to be with him again, as well as have this otherworldly experience. But the way they're laughing and smiling right into each other's faces as they're making love is, again, so unique. Like, it was so sweet. Like, when you're watching it, you're like, this is a really important moment for both of them. It isn't this like overly like unbridled, like passionate. Instead, it's like they're fumbling around and they're both laughing and smiling. And I was like,
Yeah, it's believable.
that's really believable, and it's directed so sweetly. Like, I was surprised to see that, because I think part of me was kind of knowing that was coming, because it's definitely like ingrained in my childhood memory, and knowing it was coming, I was like, oh boy, I can't remember how this scene's handled, and then seeing it and being like, wow, that was really well done.
Yeah, no, like I said before, you know, this is something we've seen before, but there are those unique moments in the movie where, you know, I just love the concept of her kind of being forced to talk about her grieving, right?
Yeah,
with him.
With him, yeah, I know. It's this long form. You know, they always say
it's a sci-fi movie that turns into this great love story.
Exactly. Right. Well, and one of the things, and you know, that was one of the things that Carpenter said from early on is, and one of the movie references that he made about what he wanted to make was One of them was It Happened One Night, and the other one was The 39 Steps. And he was like,
Oh, okay.
I love road trip movies where there's two people at the beginning that don't like each other, and over the course of these events are forced to come together, and at the end of it, it's a love story. And so, like, that was his influence
Midnight
with this.
Run. Stuff like that.
The classic love story, Midnight Run. You know, when someone loses a loved one and you go into grief counseling, there is like one of the pretty common exercises that they have somebody do is to write a letter to that person, knowing that you'll never be able to get it answered, but it gives you a chance to like bitch about all the stuff that you wanted to and ask questions and vent, like just get it all out there on paper. And part of it is realizing that it's a futile exercise. Like that's part of the reason why you do it, right? And this movie, in a lot of ways, for her character, that's what she's getting to do. I mean, she is given a gift, and he says this to her, that she is going to have this baby.
I gave you a baby tonight.
I gave you a baby tonight. But then he gives her an out. He's like, if you want me to take it away, tell me now, you know?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I love
beautiful.
I love that he can't stop smiling after they have sex.
Well, I mean, you just had sex with Karen Allen.
I mean, you know, you saw her running around in those tidy whities.
Like I said, realistic.
Great job. But you know, and so she does get something out of it, but in a lot of ways, it still is the grieving letter. It's still writing that grieving letter.
Yeah.
It's this exercise where she's like, I get this one last moment. It's going to last 3 days. And at the end of it, he's going. Like, I am losing him again.
Now she gets something in return, and something that can live on forever.
It made me think again of the movie Arrival, in the sense of like, there's a gift in this baby.
Yeah.
The baby will remember me and remember where it came from. And that last
gives him that
orb.
ball.
Yeah. And so you're like, oh shit, like
He'll know what to do.
mankind actually might be able to be saved. Like we might not all be these assholes flying around in these helicopters.
Yeah.
Because we get to go onto this place. That last scene where the ship comes down and
then Aquaman was created.
but we see this like this great sort of this hyper stylized ending with the red and the blue, and we're really focusing in on Karen Allen's face, and it almost looks like Creepshow, right? With that super hyper lighting on her. I felt like it had to be an homage to Suspiria. Again, you think about Carpenter, you think about how much he loves horror, and in that moment, even there, like if you look at a still image of the two next to each other, Karen Allen looks a lot like Jessica Harper, the main actress from Suspiria, with the red and the blue against her like that. It's gorgeous.
I love this not really final scene, but they finally get to talk to Sherman.
Yes.
And they get trapped in this, you know, they're searching for these people, and they get cornered in this diner. And that really is the climax. Even though after it there is gunfire and helicopters and all this stuff, the real climax is at this diner. For sure. He's slowly dying or becoming weaker, like you said, because of the balls. And
which kind of happens out of nowhere. Like he definitely says like, yeah, I can't stay or whatever. And then really quickly it's like, he's dying, can't you see? And I'm like, he's dying. And then I was like, I guess he's like a little red around the eyes. Like, didn't you guys just have sex last night? And he was like
well, part of what he talks about with Sherman is the things that he enjoys about being human. This is what I like about you.
Yes.
And it's dancing and eating and I assume banging.
He doesn't explicitly say it, but maybe he squeezes her knee under the table. All the things I love.
They take this detour to Vegas conveniently.
Yeah, they do.
When they run out of money.
They do, and it's a pretty great little scene. Although it is funny because there's a little bit of a false foreshadowing that happens here, a little bit of a red herring.
Yeah.
Because she's like, we don't want to look too conspicuous, and then he immediately goes to the main jackpot and wins it, and then they're back out on the road again, and I was like, huh. I would have thought there'd be at least one kind of like casino-esque scene of him maybe getting like roughed up a little bit by the management before
he
running
won
out.
$500,000. So.
Yeah, you'd think.
And they bought a new Buick.
Yes, they did. They did buy a new Buick.
But I don't know. This movie, like, he's just so simple-minded and not really necessarily emotionless, but kind of. But it really shows how much we overcomplicate things as humans.
Yes.
Living on Earth. And
he's got a real Forrest Gump vibe to him in that way, I think.
Sure.
Like there's definitely like there's a love through the simplicity there that makes him seem like his stoicism and simplicity actually lends itself to more kindness and understanding. And so in that way, he is kind of this mirror that other characters kind of project themselves onto.
I love in this conversation with Sherman how he has so many questions, and questions that we've probably been wondering, not necessarily crucial questions, but just the bigger picture questions, like, have you been here before? Are you just checking us out?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like, is this the first time you've been here? Like, I thought that was a great, cool twist near the end of the movie. That, like, you know, I don't know. It just,
well, and what he says, he's like, you humans are so fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, he's like,
you're intelligent but savage.
You're intelligent but savage. And he says, and you are at your best when things are worst.
Yeah.
You know, and he just leaves him speechless, you know, and it's, again, I think this movie is such
It's just a sweet movie.
It's such a gem because it's able to bring up all these really interesting ideas and interesting questions and thoughts without having to be nihilistic and without having to necessarily even be challenging. Like even that all of the loose ends that are probably left over, we don't get because we get a hard credit cut.
For sure.
Right, when he's gone, you know, and which is fine. Like that's the movie said the things that it wanted to say. I mean, in my head, I'm like, oh, there's no way that she's ever leaving a laboratory for the rest of her life.
I could have done without any of the army stuff, because that's just like cookie cutter, reactive. We're gonna blow up the aliens because we're scared. Fear of the unknown. Right?
And
we talked about it with the sci-fi trope.
Yes, and I'm sure that if Carpenter had his choice, he probably would have gotten rid of all that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sure that was
this
studio being like, well, we need some action here.
Yeah.
We need to follow the military. But I agree, like it doesn't need it.
It's definitely easy Carpenter though, I think. And if you haven't seen him before, this is a great one to start with.
Totally.
I think.
Well, and I think that I think it's really interesting doing this festival, and the fact that we're choosing for the most part, I mean, I wouldn't say lesser known, but less celebrated, because honestly, Starman is the only movie of John Carpenter's that ever got an Academy Award nomination.
That's right, for Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges. He lost to F. Murray Abraham for Amadeus.
Well,
I mean, you know, that's fine. That's fine.
He's no Salieri in this movie.
He's no Salieri. It's true. But a close second. Salieri, also inhabited by an alien being. I don't know if you knew that.
Huh? Also a convicted pedophile.
Neither one of those things are true.
No. We're just being funny. Truly a sweet movie, though. Love this movie.
It really is. And
I watched this when I was younger and always loved it. Didn't know who John Carpenter was. It was just a movie my mom really loved. And this is just really
I didn't know it was John Carpenter either for a really long time. And I guess that's what I'm getting at, is this idea that picking these somewhat lesser known or lesser celebrated movies of his and then finding out how his trajectory worked and why he did the different movies that he did. And a lot of times he did the ones he did because of either the success or lack thereof of the previous movie that he did. Again, just shows like what he was like as a young dude, trying to be like, ugh, okay, they're not getting me. What do I do here?
Yeah, just doing something completely opposite of the thing.
Yeah, to try and just like own up to that. And we'll talk about that more in our next episode also, about why he did Prince of Darkness, because again, looking at his sort of trajectory, there were reasons for it.
Cool.
But yeah, so it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, please go check it out. I think that it totally holds up. I mean, yeah, some of the special effects are maybe not as fantastic as something you'd see right now. But again, in my opinion, they're more endearing than they are cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, to me, they're more like, oh, this is cool. This is like groovy early 80s, Stranger Things style, like blue glowing lights and things like that. Like, I really like it. It works.
No, yeah. I think a lot of things get poached from this movie that we probably don't realize. But awesome Carpenter movie. Definitely one to start with if you haven't seen it before. Next week, we are going to do Prince of Darkness, like you said. Please like and subscribe if you like what you heard or see. And yeah, we're going to continue our Carpenter Festival.
Will you please do it? Will you please do it as our outro here?
No.
Come on. Do your Starman. Do your Starman.
Well, you have to do it with me.
Okay.
You're not going to. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Mwah.
This is how we get loosey goosey and into it.
As a starman. I'm forgot I was wearing a beanie today. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be on camera.
I forgot how fucking gray I've gotten.
Oh yeah, I've got that. That's why I'm wearing the beanie.
Yeah.
Karaoke band.
Oh yeah.
Right? Have you ever done that? That
No.
sounds fun, right?
This is your dad's friend's band, right?
No. They don't do karaoke. I mean, if they're a cover band.
But that's all they have to do. They have their roster.
Sing the backups.
Yeah, we saw them play. They did like
Bone Pile.
Bone Pile.
That's right.
We're giving a shout out to Bone Pile, right?
Free
now.
advertising, Bone Pile.
Yeah. These damn kids with their microwaves and their beanie babies.
Beanie